if I could ask all of you to stay muted until until I give the presentation, then I'll open it up to questions and answers. And so if you could, let's make sure that we're muted. All right, let me share my screen. So this study abroad is something that I've actually wanted to do for a pretty long time. Dr. Vandenhouten and I have taught a course on the history of genocide together. This will be the third time. We began this in 2014. And we've always sort of dreamed of pairing that learning community with us with a study abroad. And so that's what we're planning this upcoming semester. And so that's let me just go over some logistics here. First of all, this study abroad is embedded, which means it's part of a larger course that is mandatory for all study abroads that happen over spring break. This is not unique. Any study abroad at Flagler College that happens over spring break must be embedded in the course. The unique thing about this particular one is it's actually embedded in a learning community. The learning community consists of History 431, which is the History of Genocide class, Political Science 431, which is simply called Genocide, and Dr. Vandenhouten is the instructor of that. And then, so that's 6 credits, right? This course is quite unique in that we don't consider these separate. All of the assignments, all of the classes, everything is joint. So we meet together. Dr. Vandenhouten and I are at every class, and we both engage in discussion. And so there really is no separation between these classes. All of the assignments are in common. We grade them sort of together, and so it is a true learning community in that sense. Now, it is not required to go on the study abroad to be part of those classes. If you're interested in this topic but don't want to do the study abroad, you can do just the classroom portion of this for 6 credits, and that would be allowed. Now, I will say, if you're interested in that, you need to contact me, because we have these listed as instructor approval at this point, because we're trying to create a gateway so that the students who want to go on the study abroad can be sure to register for those classes. Okay. And if that doesn't make sense, then let me know later and I can try to clarify. And so if you want to do the study abroad, you need to register for all 3 of these classes. Now, I recognize that that's 9 credits. That means you're going to devote, half or even more than half of your semester to the study of genocide, which can be a really emotionally difficult and sort of intellectually difficult thing to do. But I will say at the same time that I have never had a more rewarding experience in the classroom in my entire career, either as a student or as a teacher, than this class. I have had students say this was life-changing. I've had students sort of completely refashion the vision they had for their lives and their careers because of this experience. I'm not saying that that's an absolute, that's going to happen to everybody, but this can be a really profound class that will help to shape your life and your interests. So I think that's all I need to say about the class itself, and you can ask questions later. Now, the study abroad, actually, let me go back to that previous one. The listed cost right now is $2,871. However, we had to raise that because we were seeing airline prices, I think due to COVID, that were artificially high. I looked a couple days ago at airline prices and they were significantly lower. And so I think we're going to be able to lower that. And within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to, continue to monitor this, and we will probably adjust it downwards by, I don't want to say absolutely what we're going to do, but I imagine there's going to be, at least a couple $100 knocked off of that cost. And so that includes airfare, accommodation, transportation inside of Europe. We're going to take, buses and trains, and they're actually going to fly from Prague to Krakow. And so that's all included in this. It includes entry fees into the various museums and historical sites we'll be visiting. And it does not, however, include meals. If you're worried about the cost there, I know how to travel in Europe on the cheap. I've spent a lot of time in Europe. I can teach you how to do this. But of course, if you want to budget in yourself, a few $100s for 10 days to eat at nice places, you can do that too, right? So, or have some mix of those two things. So you should recognize that, this does not include meals. It does not include the passport either. If you don't have a passport and you're interested in going on this trip, you really should start working on that now, because we are only, at this point, less than 5 months away from the trip itself. And so, it takes a couple of months at least to get a passport. So if you don't have a passport, you should really start working on that. The other thing that I did not include on this slide that I will say is that we have a donor who has donated some money specifically to provide scholarships to students to go on this trip. And that's going to be, there will be an application process. That's not something you should count on because there are only a few of those. I think he's provided enough for 4 $1,000 scholarships, if I'm correct in that. And, if you're interested in this, let me know, and we will, send you the information about how to apply for the scholarship, but you should, not necessarily count on that being available. Okay. Or that you're a shoo-in to get that necessarily. The dates for the trip are the 10th through the 20th of March. And that's the Thursday before spring break, where we'll leave. We'll get there Friday morning, and we will jump right into it, jet lag and all. Okay. And we will come back on Sunday, the 20th. And unfortunately, you're going to have to wake up the next morning and go to class. You'll be exhausted, but you will be richly rewarded by this experience, I think. So it'll be worth it. The sites that we're going to visit. First, we're going to start in Prague. We will spend 3 days in Prague. Prague so this study abroad is focused specifically on the Holocaust. Prague, there were 60,000 Jews roughly in Prague at the beginning of World War II. And that entire community was decimated. But much of the old Jewish neighborhood in Prague, which is right in the city center, right along the Vidova River. I mean, it's in a prime location. That has been preserved, and much of that has been turned into museums and things like that. And so there are 5 synagogues in the old Jewish town of Prague that have been, changed into these museums. The Jewish cemetery pictured here. But in addition to the Jewish sites in Prague, we are also going to, of course, see Prague Castle and the town square with the 15th century astronomical clock, which is displayed here. We are going to and we're going to go to an opera in the Estates Theater, which was built in the 18th century. Some years ago when I was in Prague, I saw a performance of Don Giovanni by Mozart in the Estates Theater, where it had been performed originally with Mozart directing it. Right. So that's a really significant historical site. And even if you don't like opera, you really should have that experience in Prague. OK. If you have not been to Prague, Prague is one of the most exciting cities in Europe. It's probably my personal favorite city in Europe. And there's just a ton to do. Like, the nightlife is great. There are often just sort of concerts like in Wenceslas Square, and there are great restaurants and other things to partake of culturally. So Prague is definitely a can't miss destination. We will take about a half-day trip to go to Terezín, which was the site of the concentration camp of Theresienstadt. This is part of that right here. This is a really interesting concentration camp because it was simultaneously a concentration camp and a work camp. They used an 18th century military fort as part of that, but they turned the entire town of Terezín into a concentration camp. And so it's a pretty unique site, actually, one that is really important for the study of the Holocaust. From Prague, we're going to fly to Krakow, and we're going to spend 3 days in Krakow. These pictures are all of Krakow. These are ones I've taken personally. We're going to see the site of the Jewish ghetto, and like in Prague, the old Jewish neighborhood, and there are still signs in Hebrew and things like that that have been preserved. If you have seen Schindler's List, most of that movie takes place in Krakow. And the factory where Oskar Schindler, you can see the plaque here on this picture, the factory where Oskar Schindler set up his business, and which became the catalyst for saving the lives of over 1,000 Jews, that has been turned into a museum. And so we're going to go to that. But in addition to that, there's a lot of other things to see in Krakow. And so we'll take a day to see the castle and the cathedral and, the town square and the old cloth hall, which is a great place to do some shopping. And Krakow is just a really charming city. And there's, it's another place where you can just sort of walk around and see really cool things. About an hour away from Krakow is Auschwitz. And this is the most famous of all of the camps, of course. There are actually two parts of Auschwitz. There is the work camp, or the concentration camp, which has permanent barracks. It's on one side of town, and that's been turned into a museum. And so we'll go to that. In addition to that, we will visit Auschwitz II, or Birkenau, which the gate of which is pictured here. That was the death camp. And it's huge. I mean, it covers something like, I can't remember, 50 acres or something like that, maybe more. It takes several hours to see Birkenau, to really kind of see it. It's about a mile walk from the gate back to the site where the gas chambers and crematoria were. And there are barracks where experiments were done on the inmates in the camp. You have the showers and things like that where they process the people who were turned into workers in the camp. I mean, it's a site where you really need to take some time. And so we're going to take a full day of our time in Krakow to drive to Auschwitz, and we'll try to get there right when it opens, and probably spend, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours there. From Krakow, we will take the train then to Warsaw. And that's where we'll conclude our trip. There's a lot of stuff to do in Warsaw. The site of the Jewish ghetto. There's not much of that left, actually. Warsaw, of the 3 places we're going, was the one that was most destroyed during the war. Both Prague and Krakow were preserved pretty well. And so Warsaw is a little bit different. A lot of this has been reconstructed, but they've tried to be historically accurate with all of this. The one thing that Warsaw has that's kind of unique is that it has the Museum of Jewish Life in Poland, which is a really wonderful place to visit. And so we'll take a half day to see that museum, and we'll walk the ghetto trail and some of these other things that you can do in Warsaw. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the trip. And I guess at this point, I can just open it up for questions. So what questions do you have? You'll need to unmute, obviously. Really? No questions. Okay.
I have one.
No, please.
I just got an email about this trip, but I'm a philosophy and psychology major, and it'll be my last semester as a senior, and so it'd be difficult to get these 3 classes in, but also graduate on time. There's like no way to take the trip without the classes.
No, that's not my rule. That's Flagler College's rules.
Okay.
I mean, you could contact Ashley Coffey in the International Center. She's the director of the International Center, and just ask her. I mean, that place is under new management. She may have a different opinion. I'm going off of kind of the old regime there, which was very, very strict on these sorts of things. There may be room, and I just don't know. I mean, the rule is that if you take a spring break study abroad trip, it has to be embedded in a course.
Okay.
And I'm going with that rule, but feel free to contact Ms. Coffey, and she might give you some hope there. But I can't unfortunately say
That's
that.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, if you are interested in this trip and you want to do the kind of full experience, please contact me so that I can clear you to register for these classes. If you want to take some time to think about this, I mean, this is not at this moment your only opportunity. I realize registration starts next week and you probably have to make some decisions about this. But if you want to kind of sit on it for a while, register for other classes, there probably will be room, later on if you kind of have a change of heart. So even, in a couple of weeks, if you decide after sitting on this for a while that this is really what you want to do, then feel free to contact me at that point. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And hopefully some of you will be in touch.